Hey everyone, welcome to Be the Change. My name is Lily Mott, and today's episode is about how change comes when you find your own Bob from the estate. I am so excited to share this episode with you all because I've been looking forward to having this guest on the podcast for quite a while, ever since I started working with her at My Life My Say, and I'm a big fan of the work that she's done in the past, and I'm really excited to follow along with her plans for the future. Hayley Biley is a board member at Croydon Commitment, a creative changemaker, and an activist who is passionate about creating spaces and experiences that connect people. So, with that quick introduction, let's get started with this episode featuring Hayley Biley.
My name is Hayley. Until very recently, I was in charge of engagement at a non-partisan organization called My Life My Say, who work to get young people engaging in democracy and ultimately registering to vote. We were the leaders of the biggest and, in my opinion, the best youth voter registration campaign in the UK, ultimately leading to 488,000 young people registering to vote. Now, aside of this, I am a creative change maker, a bit of a loudmouth activist who champions the voices of people who aren't always in the room and they aren't seen and they aren't heard. I tend to focus on people who I relate to the most. So, black and brown, women, people who are from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And the way that I show up to serve them is through creating spaces and experience that connect people.
I love that. And first of all, I want to start with just can you tell us how recently you worked in My Life Marseille? Because I think that's a very exciting part of this.
I literally left yesterday,
Okay, so
which
very
is
fresh.
so today's the 29th of Jan, 2025. I left yesterday, it was my last day. I was there for 2.5 years overseeing engagement, so it's like trying to find out again who I am, what I do.
Yeah, I love that. So, can you tell me what got you started with working as a change maker? I think you've had lots of different roles. My Life, My Say was not your first social impact role. Can you tell me
No.
about what inspired you to get started with that and tell me a little bit about that background for you?
Yeah, sure. So it's really funny because someone asked me not the exact same question recently, but a an activist came up to me and said, "What's your big story?" And I was like, "I don't have a big story, to be honest with you." Like, I've always been someone who, if I feel like there is some sort of wrongdoing, I'm a bit like the Robin Hood in the room that will be, and you know what? Someone else said this to me. That's why I'm stealing it because I was like, that's a really nice way to describe me. Thank you. But the Robin Hood in the room in the sense of that's not cool, and I'm gonna do this for this person. So I've always been loud. I've always been calling out things if I think it could be done better or something isn't right. And I think that started from me in my like teenage years in school. If someone was being spoken to in a way that I didn't really like or think was cool, I would call it out. And I think somehow it's developed into this deeply ingrained personality trait of how I decide to take on the world. So, yeah, I think it started as that, but then what happened is, grew up a bit, went to university, did marketing. I didn't study politics or anything. A lot of people usually expect that. I didn't. I did marketing. Um, and I just kind of found myself in loads of different positions of working with social impact or mission-led companies. So it's covered everything from intergenerational childcare to networking and meaningful connection for Black and brown women to confidence and intersectional feminism and all of these things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's also what's really interesting is working with you. I've gotten to see how intersectional you are. I think that's a great way to describe the work that you've done, just because I think you are really good at seeing the way that different groups of people can support each other, which makes you really, really powerful in the work that you do. We all have intersectional challenges. And so trying to figure out what those are and how we can solve them together, I think that's huge. So you talk a lot about this idea of the person who's not in the room. And I think that that's something that I want to talk with you a little bit about because I know a lot about this, but I think it's so cool the way that you explain it. So if I were to ask you, like, who do you do this work for? Tell me about that.
So, as you know, someone I always go back to, and whether it's been at My Life, My Say, or even with like my board position now at Croydon Commitment, is my example of like Bob from the estate. I think Bob from the estate is actually a representation of me, and it just means someone in all the ways that I've described before, of like from a lower socioeconomic background, black or brown, someone that I can relate to. I just feel like often you're just left out of the conversation, you're left out of the space. And I just think at the stage that I'm at right now, I don't understand why that still happens. I think everyone deserves to have their voice heard and the opportunity to share opinions, especially when it comes to their lived experience. And I feel like Bob slash me have often been left out of those conversations and those spaces. So yeah, every single activity, everything I do, whoever I'm working with, if you don't have an interest in being like, how is Bob involved? Has Bob had their 5 minutes at least to share something on this? Then I don't know. I don't really want to mess with it. I think as well, a lot of that comes from just as a person in general, being from Croydon, I've always gotten a lot of like flack for it. It's always a joke or it's a thing of like, oh, well, Croydon's rough. And it's like, it kind of makes you feel in a way your opinion shouldn't be shared or it's not as valid. And I just don't believe that as I've gotten older. I think, if anything, my opinion is the most important because I've then been through some things that other people can't relate to or haven't experienced. That means my voice should actually be the loudest voice in the room. And so I think realizing that, realizing I'm getting a little bit older now, I'm still young, but getting a bit older now, other people, mini Bobs from the estate, I guess, younger versions of Bob from the estate should also be in the room.
I think that's such a great way to live your life and do your work. And I think that also leads me really well to the next question. Kind of scary, but what is next? You mentioned being a member of the board of trustees at Croydon Commitment. Tell me about that, but also tell me about what you're hoping to do next. Lots of things coming up for you. Don't want to put too much pressure on it, but what can you tell me now?
Yeah, let's start with Croydon Commitment. For a while, I felt like I would love to be on a board. I would love to be a trustee. And that comes from just a lot of the impact I've been able to create at My Life, My Say. I feel like I can offer to other places too. Like, why keep me all in one place? Let's share out my ideas. Why not? So I've been thinking about being on a board and then stumbled across Croydon Commitment. Seemed like the perfect opportunity as someone who always bangs on about being from Croydon, which I know you can attest to. And yeah, it's basically a really great local organization in the area that works on corporate social responsibility and tries to connect people, natives from Croydon, with local businesses to give them opportunity and to give them experiences. And me being there means that I want to champion more of the youth voice, as Croydon is one of the youngest, I think maybe the youngest borough in London, with like a quarter of residents being 18 or under. And I just feel there are a lot of things that could be, I don't want to say changed, but maybe initiatives that could be supported or created to help the people already living here. So I'm super excited for it. I have a lot of ideas when it comes to the strategy. It's still very new. I think officially it's been like 2 weeks. So I've had my first board lunch. It's going to be a whole new experience, but I'm excited to get stuck in and get involved. And then outside of that, and after my next chapter, after My Life, My Say, I'm going to do the same thing in the sense of still wanting to work on building community, building spaces, building experience, but on a more freelance basis. So I can help a wider range of organizations. Because like we said earlier, if you look at my LinkedIn, covers a lot of different things. At a glance, it would all look very unrelated, but actually, if you delve into it a bit more, I think you'll see it's all very social impact focused. And yeah, I would just love to do a bit of that again. I think it's fun. New challenges, new spaces, new ways to connect. I do also have a deep love, passion, interest in nutrition and food. And there is something I'm working on. I feel like I'm going to need a whole nother podcast to talk about it, but I want to do some more things around that. I want to do some more things around food quality and building my own thing. So that's something I'm thinking about.
We'll leave it there and then we'll have you on another episode later when you're ready to
So
come up and
down.
talk
I'm
about
so
that.
down.
So I think, as you've mentioned, you've had lots of different roles, and I think that you've made change and inspired people in a lot of different ways.
including me. I mean, I think working with you has been such a great experience. So, as far as the young people who might be listening, who might want to create change and get involved in this work that you've been involved in, but might not know how to get started with that work, what advice would you want to share with them?
Yeah, so I think first of all, I think it's a two-part question. The first part is like where do you go, right? And it's like sometimes you actually just need to look within yourself. I think everyone at the moment, there is this big trend in seeking community. Everyone's trying to build community, and I think they're great as long as they're for genuine and the right reasons. But also sometimes you don't need the community straight away. The community will sometimes come to you and reveal itself. So I think, yeah, this kind of links to the second part of just looking within yourself and whatever it is that you care about, as long as you care about it a little bit, the getting started is just talking about it a bit more. There doesn't need to be a drastic action. It doesn't need to be that you go and join a program or work in a certain place. You just start talking about it. If you love Instagram and you want to think, how can I get involved or how can I start something or I want to change make, start doing posts about the thing that you care about. I don't feel like it has to be on a huge scale to start, but I think just think about what resonates with you and why it's important to you and be a little bit unapologetic about the way that you talk about it.
As you could probably tell throughout the episode, I was so excited to talk with Hayley and to share her story and the work she's doing. I think Hayley's commitment to Bob from the estate inspires me so much because she's really being the change that she wants to see in her community for those younger people, those mini Bobs from the estate who are growing up now. I'm so excited to see where Hayley goes from here with the work she's doing, but one thing is certain. Hayley is going to continue working hard to make change for Bob from the estate, and that is something that we can all keep in mind. Who is your Bob from the estate? Who motivates you to do the work that you do? These questions are so important to consider and keep in mind, especially if you're doing social impact work, because change comes when you find your own Bob from the estate. Thank you so much for listening to this episode, and you can find Hayley on LinkedIn, and I included that link in the description of this episode. If you want to talk about anything I mentioned, please reach out to me by email at lily@bethechangepodcast.org or on Instagram at Be The Change Media Network. I am working on expanding Be The Change Media Network, which means bringing you more inspiring stories from amazing guests and amazing hosts. If you enjoyed this episode, I would really appreciate it if you could leave the podcast a rating and a comment, because it will help these stories to reach, educate, and inspire more people, and I would love to hear your thoughts and feedback. Tune in for my next episode, but until then, be the change you wish to see in the world. Bye, guys!